One of the problems with recruiting for investment banking is not the knowledge or skills you acquire, but the access to talk with real investment bankers to put your best foot forward. Our sponsor, WSO Academy, can provide those connections with 60 head mentors who are finance professionals at top firms like Goldman, Centerview, and JP Morgan. Imagine being able to get on the phone within 24 hours with one of the Academy's 1,300 mentors right before a critical interview. Get on the waitlist for WSO Academy today by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting wallstreetoasis.com/academy. All right. Welcome to Investment Banking Insights. This is the only show dedicated to helping you learn both the technical and the non-technical aspects of the investment banking process. Hi, my name is Alex Mason and I am your host. And let's go ahead and talk about Goodwill today. Goodwill is kind of an interesting concept. It's one that took me a little bit to understand and internalize what it actually means. But I want to describe for you today what it is because I think it's very important, especially in terms of understanding the balance sheet of a corporation. And it becomes even a more important concept once you get into understanding mergers and acquisitions between companies. So let's go ahead and look into the concept of goodwill. And this is effectively what goodwill is. So there are many different types of assets that a business owns. For example, it could own some kind of property, it could own like a factory, for instance, or maybe it owns a fleet of vehicles or some type of equipment. Not sure exactly what I just drew there, but it's equipment. So these are physical assets. But there are other types of assets that a company owns that are intangible, things that are a little bit hard to understand from an accounting perspective, but we understand this intuitively, right? We understand that there's value, for example, in the Pepsi brand name. Or we understand that there's value in, let's say that there's some kind of a patent that a company owns. This is super important for things like pharmaceutical companies. They own a patent or the right to make some kind of a pill or some kind of a drug. And that patent, that right to make a certain formulation of a product has a ton of value. It's not just the value of the end product itself. So these are examples of intangible assets. And so when a company buys another company, what are they buying? They're buying a ideally cash-producing enterprise. And so when one company buys another, they get everything, right? They get all of these physical assets and they get all of these intangible assets. Now, the value of these things is a little bit interesting. So the physical assets, may be worth $100. Maybe the intangible assets are worth $200, and combined the net value, we call this net value, is $300. But maybe the net value of the tangible assets is really only this $100. Net value of the tangible assets. And so let's say that the company pays much more than this $100. Maybe they're paying $1,000. So the difference between what the company pays for the business and the value of the net tangible assets of that firm, that is something called goodwill. And Goodwill is super important because you'll see this show up actually on the balance sheet as an asset of itself. Goodwill is itself an intangible asset because what it's saying is the business has purchased another business and they paid more than what's considered the fair market value of the net tangible assets. And we have to account for that somewhere, right? Because we can't just have a company pay more for another company and then say that value just vanished out of thin air. It has to justify that value. So that goes on the asset side of the balance sheet. And the interesting thing about this is that over time, this goodwill is tested for impairment, quote unquote, over time. And all that means is there's a review done, usually on an annual basis, where the company says, okay, we bought this company for X number of dollars, and the value of goodwill we put on our balance sheet is Y. Is that value Y really Y, or is it less than Y? And so they're testing for that. So for example, if a company paid for another business and they're really focused on their brand name, for instance, is that brand name still worth as much as it was initially when the company was purchased? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And so that goodwill is tested for impairment over time. And so that's the basic concept of goodwill. We'll get into the actual calculation of goodwill in a future episode when we talk about mergers and acquisitions more specifically. But that's a general concept. And that's a wrap for today. Here on Investment Banking Insights, my name is Alex Mason, and I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you for watching, for listening. However you're getting this, I hope it's helping you and hope it's serving you in your recruiting process. And I'll see you on the next one. All right, bye.